Students, welcome back to the Ugly Chairs podcast. So glad that you're joining us again. My name is Joel, one of the hosts of the podcast, and today I'm joined by my friends Chelsea and Drew as we're diving into a couple more episodes together. What's up, y'all?
Not much.
Doing great.
Doing great.
Good to see you. Drew, this is our first time being on a podcast together, man.
I'm excited.
Welcome, bro. So I have to ask, what is your favorite thing about being on the Ugly Chairs podcast with Allie, since you've gotten a lot of chance and experience to hang out with her then?
Oh, man. She just looks so regal in that chair.
Regal?
Yes.
Yes.
It's like a throne.
Yes.
It is a throne.
And so what's nice is I know my place in the podcast. She's in the regal chair. She has the wings.
Every time, whether it's
you got the dad chair.
or Caleb, who sat in that chair? Was it Vixby? Was it Adam?
Probably.
I think it was Adam in the other episode there too. Like that chair to me still looks very comfortable. Maybe one of these episodes we'll just all switch out.
It really is. It's ugly but comfy.
Yes.
It looks
quite ugly.
Takes away the ugliness, I think.
Yeah. Chelsea, have you grown to love this chair anymore since the last episode you were on?
It's got some good support.
Yeah.
Some lumbar support.
Yeah. My back feels good.
It's important.
Yeah, it's a good one. I like it. But I agree. We should switch it up one of these days.
Just
feel it out.
Totally feel it out. I feel like my knees would be above the table though in this chair.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Which they already kind of are in this. But.
Yeah, they are.
we'll have to work on that then too. But y'all know I'm excited to have you guys on for this next couple of episodes as we're diving into really just talking about the idea of hard topics that come up in culture and our lives and how we deal with that both for ourselves but also with others around us then too. So I'm excited for us to talk about that over these next couple of episodes. But to get us started, what I would love to know is in high school, was there a subject or a topic in school then for you that was especially challenging? And in those classes, was there ever a fun story that kind of came out of your struggle in a particular subject then?
I was bad at the maths.
At the math, okay.
Sounds bad. Like English maybe wasn't your forte either.
The maths were not my friend. And then I took chemistry class because I had to. I don't even think it was an option.
Yeah.
I didn't get to choose that. They didn't let us choose back then. Now I know students get to choose their schedule. They're just no, you're taking chemistry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But so chemistry is math.
Right.
I thought it was like Bunsen burners and beakers and really cool things.
Is
and it was
not?
like
right.
No,
it's not.
It's like balance this equation. And that was not my jam.
Yeah.
So I had the lowest score I've ever gotten in my life on a test. 28.
Oh,
not great.
Ouch.
That's not great.
That hurts.
Not great. I didn't balance the equation well.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Well, I will have to concur. Science was never my go-to either, but my favorite science class I ever did get the chance to take in high school was my high school physics class. And poor guy, we had a teacher that come in for the first time that year. And sometimes with first year teachers, you're able to kind of just get away with a little bit more than two. I'm pretty sure we watched Narnia in that class equal amount as the amount of times we opened our textbook in that class. Wow. I don't know how we managed to convince him to do that. But
so what were the physics questions?
I wish I could tell you that we actually got to some of that
Narnia.
stuff. But yeah, it's probably part of the reason why I wasn't ever any really good at it. It was just truly we watched Narnia and tried to do anything physics around I think there was one time where we were dealing with helium and the physics of gravity or whatever, and it turned into all of us singing karaoke, sucking helium out of these balloons. it was such a fun class, but also none of us did very good on the test then because we didn't actually learn anything in the classes.
Wow.
Private school?
Yeah. You know.
That feels that way.
Yeah, it was. Chelsea, how about for you?
Oh man, it's hard to pinpoint one. I feel shoot.
Oh no.
She was like,
English.
Yes.
All of the above.
All of the above.
English has never been my forte, for sure. There's a running joke in my family to this day that they say that I can't read.
That's
so mean.
I can read, but it just took me a really long time because when I was in elementary school, I was homeschooled until third grade. Mm-hmm. And so when we're going through the beginning, and I'm the baby of 4, and so we were all kind of homeschooled. So by the time my mom got to me and some of the trainings, it was exhaustion because all of me and my siblings have ADHD.
Yeah.
So like that doesn't help, focus.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
And we're all like a year apart. So it was like chaos. So it took me a while to read, and I could get away with some. I'd like look at the pictures. She'd be like, "What was that story about, Chelsea?" I'm like, "Well, the puppy went to his family's house." She's like, "Not it. I read that one. You're lying." I'm like, "Dang it."
Oh,
so
no.
I would make up stories.
Instead of reading them?
That's awesome.
And so that kind of has been a long-standing joke in my family. Like, Chelsea can't even read.
Like to this day?
Oh, no.
My nieces.
Oh, no.
My nieces will be like,
no.
Auntie, you can't even read. It's fine. I'm like, all right, guys. I have learned. But spelling is still not my forte.
The longevity of that like jab
I'm
at you.
mad about it.
Right.
Because it's like.
It hurts.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're right. I'm not good at
man.
I have a hard time with
English.
friend. The word friend. I spelled that
Oh,
wrong.
I thought you said you have a hard time with friends.
Well, sometimes.
I was like,
actually,
you want to talk about that? Actually, that's a hard topic. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, youth pastor transition right there.
Yeah, right.
It's hard. Friendship and spelling.
It's so good. Oh man, no, but you're saying with the word friend,
Spelling it like when I'm like typing it out.
The I before E.
Every time.
Yeah.
I know
it is not a steadfast rule.
Yeah.
Neighbor way.
Don't make it a rule. It's not real.
Yeah.
That's why I get jacked up.
Yeah,
that's why I can't.
It's not your fault. It's not even homeschooling's fault.
It's just English's fault.
That's it.
Yeah. I blame the UK. Just for that though.
Just for that, no. A lot of other great things, but that one not as much. Not as much. So but yeah, so obviously in school, there's tough topics that we deal with, like English or math or science and too. But even just thinking about life, right? There's a lot of topics or just things that as students we go through and experience just for the first time in our lives, and we're navigating through just around in the world around us, or even in our schools as well too. So I'm curious, as you guys think about your campuses and even just the students you guys get a chance to hang out with on a weekly basis, what are some of those like harder topics that you have felt like have been really prevalent, even just over the past couple weeks, months, that have just been kind of at the forefront of conversation then too? As you
for our students to deal with, or that we feel
that they're wrestling through with students. Yeah.
I mean, I think of two things. One of them I think is for them to defend their faith to people who have differing opinions. Maybe people who are atheist or who don't believe in God or who believe in, I don't know, anything and everything, but that isn't scripturally based. I think that can be hard sometimes to talk about, to stand up for, to be able to defend, especially when you don't feel like you have all the answers.
Yeah.
Where it's like they challenge you with a question, you're like, shoot, I don't know. Like I feel like they struggle with some of that. But I also feel like a really prevalent one that I've been seeing recently is the desire to gain their value and affirmation and love from people or relationships, and struggling with this tug-of-war balance of knowing and wanting to find their value and worth and purpose in Christ, but having just that human nature desire to want to be loved by others and to want to fit in, to want to belong, to want to be cool, to want to be liked, to want to be whatever that might look like. And I feel like that is something that they really wrestle with and is hard just in their personal life, but then also with friends. And I think that's why it trickles into defending their faith or opposing opinions with people, because of that wrestle to want to be loved or to want to fit in.
I think that's a people thing.
It's totally a people thing.
I don't think that's just a student thing.
No, for sure. But I think that's so huge in this time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%. Yeah.
Continue to struggle with that until I'm with Jesus. It's just that, like, yeah.
But I think it becomes so real and so strong in high school because there's so many competing voices. Like as you get older, it's still always a struggle for sure, but some of the noise turns down a little bit, or it can. But yeah, I just think that's such a huge one, at least for some of my students that I've been seeing just more and more.
Totally. Those are huge ones. Drew, how about for you, man?
Yeah, I think it's pressure. And I think some of the pressure they're feeling feeds into what you just said. Right. So I think those things are like super connected, of just like the expectations of their parents that they have on them, or the expectations they put on themselves that are just like way too lofty. It's good to have good goals, but just like
perfection.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. Just the pressure of perfection.
Yeah.
I think in all areas of life, it's just, it's destroying them
and suffocating. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, totally. And even thinking through some of our students at Effort then too, I think there's also like even just that wrestle of like current events and the stuff they're seeing in the news and in social media and trying to like grapple with some of that. And the other one I would throw out there too is just how to really make their faith their own, right? I think for a lot of students too, especially if they're students who've grown up in the church in their life during the course of their life, or have just been, having parents that have just like brought them again and again and again. For a lot of them, they're starting to wrestle through like, hey, like I can drive myself to HSM, right? Or I can drive myself to church on a Sunday, right? Like, what does it look like for me to like really take ownership of that and like choose that for myself rather than having someone else do it then as well then too. But
I love that they're wrestling through that now.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And like
Absolutely.
This generation can do it.
Yeah.
Like the things that they've been through, and they're so resilient, having come through a pandemic, and I think they've like come out stronger because of it. What a beautiful time now to do that, even when they're in the safety of the home. Because I feel like past generations, it was when they got out of that safety blanket and that spot that they started having those like existential crises of like, what is my faith? Does it work? What do I actually believe? Is it my parents' faith? I thought it was mine, but now I'm being challenged. I think now that they're doing it in middle school and high school, dude, so much better.
Right.
I think this is the perfect time for them to be doing that. So I can feel the pressure, but I'm also like, man, I love that.
Because I love that they have the support system of us, of their community, of their church, of other people to be able to help guide them in that. Yeah. As opposed to you're on your own. Yeah. Figure it out. Hope it works out. You know.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Totally. And actually, that kind of segues off of what I was hoping to even talk about with that too, as we think through even our experience with kind of wrestling through, these different kind of hard topics as well too. Where have you seen maybe the church even step into just helping you navigate those hard topics as you were growing up then too, right? Were those like good responses you seen the church, have, or were they like bad ones? Like what were some of those interactions like when you think about those, you yourself going through and wrestling with those hard topics?
I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
I think when we think of like the church,
right,
you can think of like all of Christendom, of just like my individual local church or the church Christians broadly. Yeah. I think you could say like, man, there's been times that like the church has done a great job responding and loving and caring. And there's other times where it's just been like an absolute dumpster fire. Like, you guys are supposed to be following someone who's about grace and truth and love, and you are not showing that. So I think like how I saw it when I was a student done well is when my leaders and even when my parents let me be wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
dude, that's huge.
I said something in group and I could see on their face, they were like, should we address this? Yeah. And they didn't, but they gave me a safe space to process those things out loud. And it was okay that I walked out not having like perfect theology or no, like, no, I was like 16 and I experienced something and I was working through what I've heard, what I've read in the Bible to be true, and what I was seeing in life, and was in that process of like, how do these things meet? And just them allowing that process to happen was huge. I think that's when it's done right.
Sure,
like,
totally.
We let students process, give them truth, but then like, let them be wrong sometimes because God is going to use that to make them more like him.
Right. Because I think there's a balance between truth and grace that we need to live in that space. And that's when things are done well. If we lean too hard on what we think the truth is and our interpretation of the truth and lean away from grace, that's when I think we do it wrong. And that's when I've experienced hurtful, painful situations where something comes up, a hard topic like identity or relationships or sexuality or I remember one time in youth group we were talking about cursing and like just like our words that we were using, and when it's like so hard fast of, oh, if you do that you're wrong, you're going to hell, it's like, whoa, what? That's when it's like, okay, that's your interpretation, but I said a bad word once, I'm going to hell now, what? Like, and where it was a big moment where I'm like, this doesn't feel right. But at the moments that leaned in with grace that says, let's talk about it. Let's help you figure that out and navigate. That's when I think it's done well. And when we lean to love, because that's what Jesus was all about, right? Like he came and his script was love. He didn't condemn, but he stood up for truth. And and did what was right, but yet he stood by the woman caught in adultery and said, I'm not condemning you, but you need to change, but I'm here and I love you, as opposed to, cracking the whip and hellfire and brimstones and all of that. But I've experienced some bad and hard and hurtful, I don't think we should be acting that way as the church or as Christ followers. But I've also experienced the love that just sits in the mess with you and is like, totally. All right, let's figure it out. I'm here. I love you. Yeah. What would Jesus say about this?
It's been interesting to see the church navigate a world that the idea of truth being objective and subjective, where we are. And what I mean by that objective truth just being like, that thing is truth, and no matter the situation that truth is in, it doesn't change. Yeah. And then subjective is being like, that truth can change based on the situation.
Right.
And situations are situational.
Right.
And what's the church going to do when we have the gospel, what we see to be truth, put in this situation?
Yeah.
And how's the church going to react? And then what are we now thinking about that truth?
Right.
Because we live in a fallen world, and what we're talking about, there's hard topics, not because they're topics, they're hard because they're real.
Right. Yeah.
And they deal with
exactly.
people.
Yeah.
And so that truth of the gospel, what are we going to do when we put that into that situation?
Right.
Yeah. When you're sitting down and your parents are telling you they're getting divorced. And that truth of God being good and in control of all things doesn't feel true.
Doesn't feel like it aligns. Yeah.
So what are we going to do? And I think that's where the church has tried to figure out this objective, this true gospel in a situation where sometimes it doesn't feel true. How are we going to react? Right. And that's where we get this topic of man, that's really hard.
Yeah,
sure.
Right.
And
totally.
in the world today where it's your truth is your truth. And it's like, well, no, there's still truth. But everyone is like, well, just live your truth. Whatever you want it to be, you can make it up. You can manifest that. You can live your truth in the middle of that. So I think there's God's truth, situational truth, and then everyone's truth. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then how do you navigate that?
Yeah.
And there's a tension because you have so many different voices speaking in, telling you what's true and what's not. And it can get so confusing and head spinning.
Yeah.
There's something beautiful about that I think it's positive of I haven't been in school for years, but I don't know if there's this persecution or bullying because you're a Christian. I think it's oh, dude, that's so good. I'm glad that's working out for you. What I'm doing is working out for me.
Right.
Oh, this is all beautiful. But then when you were no, I want you to know Jesus, then it makes that barrier so hard. So there's this beauty of hey, we're unified. This is great. You believe what you believe. Kumbaya.
Right.
But then there's also this just when it comes time to, well, no, this is actually truth. And you need a savior because you need to be saved from something.
Yeah.
Your sin. That is truth. And other people are that's not the truth for me. And you're
But then there's also this end of that spectrum of well, if you don't agree with my truth or let me live my truth, then you're a hater.
Right.
And a bigot and this terrible person, And so I feel there's also that dynamic of some people are oh, that's mine. That's good for you. I love that. We can live together in peace and harmony. And then there's other people that are shame on you for condemning my truth. How are you going to tell me that's not true? That's my truth. It's but there's a true. That's everyone's true, not yours or mine. It's just true.
Right.
But then how do you navigate that? Is hard. That's hard.
That tension is so real.
Right.
It's just so prevalent in so many different ways. And for me, one of the things that I think I always come back to, even as I'm thinking about those tensions for myself or with students, man, it's just seeing where Jesus stepped into hard topics and conversations as well too, and looking back at the gospel and seeing those stories of where we see that practically play out then too. So I know, Chelsea, you had mentioned the woman caught in adultery just a couple minutes ago too, but do you guys have any favorite stories that you often go back to or just think about or think are just really good examples of Jesus stepping into those hard topics or hard conversations and navigating that with the people there in the situation then?
Every time he opened his mouth.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm sorry, that's such a terrible way to answering that.
No.
But I couldn't imagine being God coming to the earth and knowing all things and then just interacting with bozos.
Yeah.
Like, dude hung out with
24/7.
He hung out with
nothing but bozos.
He hung out with 12 guys. If you've ever hung out with more than one person, he did it with 12.
If you have been in an HSM life group,
and they were from vastly different walks of life, they had different skills, they had different education levels. They were very young at understanding who he was and what he was coming to do. And he just constantly had to like remind them of like, what I'm coming for is very different than what everyone thinks I'm here for. They think I'm here to overthrow Rome. Like, what I'm doing is so much bigger than that. Like, I'm here for the kingdom. I'm here to redeem things that are broken. And they're just like, but I want to sit at your right hand. I want to sit at your left. My mom said I deserve it. And he was just like, guys, are you kidding me?
Idiots. Gosh.
Like, he called one of his friends like Satan. Like, dude, get away from me. Like, there are times he spoke truth very directly,
quite bluntly, actually.
But then what did he do with him? He pulled him closer, and like talked to his heart, and like spoke words of the gospel of like, this is who you are, and this is who I'm redeeming you to be. Like, I'm going to make you new. And so like, just his interactions, even with his boys, are just like very interesting. More or less the Pharisees and people in town.
Oh, my word, yes.
Demon-possessed people.
Yeah.
Like, his interactions with that, he's very stern with those demons.
Yes.
Very. Like, go into those pigs and run off a cliff. That's pretty stern. But then his love and care of like, I'm going to cross this lake, go through a storm, just for you. Like in the story, if you recognize, he's talking with a ton of people, is getting exhausted. They get in a boat, they go away, they go to the other side. He meets a demon-possessed man, heals him. Demons go into the pigs, pigs die. The town people are there, are like, you just killed all of our pigs. And he got in a boat and went back to their side. Why did he go to that other side for that one man? Oh my goodness. Like, that is truth and beauty. But then he was also like, they wanted to kill him, so he kind of ran for his life.
Sure.
Just like Jesus was just a master. Absolute master of grace and truth.
And he also knew when enough was enough, which I think is beautiful and key in this too, because there was times when he left, when he said, we just need to dust off our hands and be done. There's a time when the people aren't going to listen. You're not going to have a good relationship. You're not going to have breakthrough because their hearts are hard. And he's like, there's nothing we can do here. There's a season in time to just say like, I did the best I could to give you love and truth and grace. And if we can't come to any sort of reconciliation, then all right, I'm gonna back away. I'm gonna distance myself. You know,
so hard when it's someone you love.
So hard. Oh my gosh.
Like a family member.
And you're at an impasse. Like, oh my gosh, And how do you not let your heart be so involved in that to say like, all right, God, I'm going to let you work in that because I've done everything I can in my power to speak that truth, that love, that grace. And here we are.
Absolutely.
That's rough.
I think the other interesting, like the other side of that coin, I also think too, in other ways, is like that oftentimes, sadly, there are Christians who don't always get this right?
Oh, absolutely.
Believe it or not, we're all, failed human beings as well too. Yeah, we don't get it right either, right? But also the ramification of that, the consequence of that oftentimes is that as we have these conversations about, oh my word, like Jesus was just so great at navigating through hard topics, that's immediately discredited because of a flawed human being's representation of that, right? So maybe even if there's a student out there now who's like, hey, like I've tried to think about navigating through hard topics through that lens that Jesus shared, but like someone's like showed Jesus to me in a way that makes that feel somewhat unappealing or like comes with judgment or whatever it is, or then what would you say to a student like that who's kind of processing hard topics or how to navigate them in that lens then?
I would say I'm so sorry that was your experience because that's not Jesus. That is flawed humans doing the best they can with what they got, but we all suck. And I'm just so sorry that is your experience. But look to Jesus above looking to humans. Because people are going to get it wrong. You're going to get it wrong. I get it wrong all the time. Even when I think I'm right. Sometimes I'm still wrong. And everyone responds so differently and perceives things so differently and responds so differently. And I would just tell him I'm sorry. And that's not what God intended. But we aren't Jesus. We're just trying to be more like him.
Yeah.
We're trying to follow him. And that's why we need him so desperately, because we are so far from that.
Yeah.
So far from that perfection, that love, that grace, that's why we need him so much more.
Yeah, totally.
It's hard.
Yeah. Drew, did you add to that?
Yeah, to ask them what their problem is. But not like, what's your problem?
Yeah.
But just like, no, like think
At
about.
what tone are you saying that in?
I know, I'm not like snapping or anything.
It was nice.
But I think there's like, think about what your objection is. And it's probably not with the person of Jesus or even God. Like most of my friends who said that they were followers of Jesus and then later walked away or said they don't believe anymore or deconstructed their faith, it had nothing to do with Jesus.
Right.
Most people that meet the true Jesus are so gravitated towards him. And when they meet him, their lives are so drastically changed. Their issue is normally with his followers. So saying I'm sorry, most definitely. But I think even just figuring out of like, so what is it? Like what is your objection?
Yeah.
It's probably the way that we've handled the gospel. It's probably not
the gospel itself.
The gospel itself. Because it's so beautiful. He's redeeming things that are broken. There's something inside of us that wants renewal. There's something about the human heart that like loves seeing. That's why movies are so powerful. That like oh, there's a climax and things are broken and then there's a happy ending and we love that. We have that in Jesus. He did that for us. And so like people don't have an objection with that. They're looking for that. They're looking in other places for that. It's normally us. Like we get in our own way.
Yeah. Right. And I think if they do have an objection with that, then they probably don't understand it correctly. There's probably a gap or an assumption that was made or a misunderstanding because we innately are all looking for that. And maybe if it doesn't make sense in our narrow-minded human nature, if we can't fathom it, then sometimes it's like, well, that can't be true because I don't understand it. It's like, okay, well, you're not God. And if God is that small that we as flawed humans can understand it, then that's a very little God. Because I know how flawed and dumb I can be. And so I think that's another piece of it too. If it is the gospel that they have a problem with, then it's probably just a lack of understanding because it is so good. It's such good news that we can't fully comprehend or fathom, but that's okay. Yeah, totally. And to kind of close out this kind of initial conversation with it too, I'm curious, we've talked a lot about, how we're seeing students process it, some of even a little bit of our own experience, but leaning more into that. As you guys have been able to navigate through some of the hard topics that have even been pressing on your own lives, what have been maybe like one or two things in your relationship with Jesus that's helped kind of navigate you through those things? And I'm curious to know, do you find yourself arriving more at answers to those hard topics or even maybe some more trust in Jesus in the unknowns or even maybe a little bit of the uncertainty in that as well too? I'm just curious to hear where some of that process has been.
Yeesh.
Dude,
I think it's both, man.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
I think there's something about like the longer you are with someone, the more you're going to know who they are. Like that's just relationships.
Totally.
Friends, marriages, whatever it is, the longer you're with them, the more you're going to know them. You're going to know how they react. You're going to know more about what they like and what they don't like. And how, like, that's just relationships. Your interaction with Jesus is hopefully a relationship. And so I think there is something of like knowing who God is and knowing how he reacts in the situation would make sense because God doesn't change. His characteristics don't change.
Right.
He can change how he acts in different situations, and we see that in the Bible.
Totally.
You can see that in our personal lives. But if I know him and I know his goodness and I know his love and I know his care and I know the things that he doesn't like, I'm less like surprised or put off by things in the world.
Sure.
But there's also times where I just have to choose to trust that those things I know to be true about God are true. Like in this situation, he does not feel good.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel good. I can't see how God is good and in control in this situation, but he's never proven himself not to be good in control. So why wouldn't he be in this situation?
Sure.
So I think the word is faith.
Yeah.
Like, I am choosing to believe this to be true because it's never not been true in my life. And I have a feeling once I get through this situation, I can look back and see that he's good and true. But in the middle of it, he doesn't feel good.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't always get clear answers in the middle of it. Yeah. Or sometimes, like, ever.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've asked so many times of, like, God, why is this happening? What is the purpose? What the heck is going on? And he's not going to say, oh, come over here, pull down a chair. So actually, what's happening here is, and it's like, no, we're not.
Just spells it all out.
Yeah. Like, we're not getting that. But what I do get in those moments is a grown faith, is grown grit, is grown perseverance, is a reliance on God, is understanding, like, that it's okay that I don't understand because he does.
Yeah.
And he can work all things for good no matter the situation or circumstance. And I can trust him because every time I've looked back, I have seen his fingerprints and his hand all over it. But in those moments when we don't get answers to the questions that we have, and sometimes we do, and that's awesome, but even when we don't, we can always look back and say, like, okay, God, yeah, no, you are good. You were there. I didn't see it or feel it, but now I can. And the more we search for him, the more we find him. And the more we look for God's goodness and his grace and his mercy and his love, the more we're going to find it. Yeah. And so I think just persevering in those seasons, clinging to him, holding on tight, and leaning on trust and faith just grows you so much and answers so many questions in a way that isn't necessarily the answers that you're looking for, but it's the ones that you need to grow
That's
you.
Cool. Yeah.
And I feel like when your friend is going through a hard time and they're in the middle of it and you're trying to think of, like, as a follower of Jesus, how can I help them? And, like, Christian cliches come to mind.
Oh, yes.
But, like, sometimes they're cliches because they're true.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in the middle of it, you don't want to hear that.
Right.
Like, oh, yeah, my kid was just diagnosed with cancer. You know what I mean? In a situation.
Right.
And you're telling me he's good?
Right.
You're telling me that he's in control of that?
Yeah.
You're saying that he's going to work that? How in the world is God going to work that for my good?
Yeah.
That's real.
Yes.
And it's so easy to be like, well, God's got a plan and all this stuff. But, like, in the middle of it, sometimes you're like, it doesn't feel like it.
Yep.
So I think that's, like, the hard situation of, like, that's where faith comes in. Right. Like, I have seen so many friends just saying, like, I'm choosing to believe that this is true because nothing around me looks like it is and nothing feels like it is.
Right.
That is powerful faith, though.
Yeah.
In what God can do in and through that faith.
Right.
Even outside of that situation is unbelievable. And I think that's why people's stories are so powerful.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, how in the world did you get through that?
Right.
Yeah.
And, like, God got me through it. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But, like, practically every day, what did you do? It's like, no. Every day I woke up and I thought, God is more powerful than this situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And he is good. And I'm going to put my feet on the floor, getting out of bed, knowing that to be true. And no matter what I face, no matter what I hear, I'm choosing to believe that that is true. And I'm going to go to bed. And it may have been a terrible day. And tomorrow, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to wake up. I'm going to believe that God is good. And you're going to see your faith grow.
Absolutely.
Just through that little bit of faith of saying, I'm going to choose to believe that this is true.
And over time, that affects your feelings.
Yep.
Because they're in conflict. What you believe to be true and what you feel to be true, what you see and experience, can be polar opposites. Yep. I know that's been true in my life. But when you choose to believe regardless of what you feel, eventually, and you keep doing that every day, your feelings will follow.
Yeah.
Because you'll get to see God's providence and you'll get to see the goodness. You'll get to see what you believe come to pass, and then your feelings come with it because you're experiencing it and you're seeing it. And that's so huge. Yeah,
you'll see
that
it to be true.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Even in the midst of terrible situations,
Absolutely.
you can see that God is good. Yeah.
And then the next terrible situation that comes, it's way easier to lean into it, to say, like, no, I've seen God do this before, so I know he's going to do it again. And even if it's not today or tomorrow or the next day, I know he's going to, because I've felt it, I've seen it, I've watched it happen in the past during hard situations, so it's going to happen again. Yeah, totally. And you're just standing on a firmer foundation, and your faith grows so much, and you become more unshakable in those moments.
The book of James says you can have joy in hard times. Right. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, totally.
Doesn't always make sense, but
yeah.
But
it does not. But it's reassuring to still even just hear that then too, and knowing that someone's been processing that and thinking about that, and that we can hold on to that truth then too. So y'all, some killer thoughts. Thank you guys so much for helping just open up this discussion about hard topics then. And I'm excited for our next episode as we kind of shift a little bit more into like how we specifically navigate that with others then as well too. So make sure you guys join us for that, and we'll see you there.